A Random Walk, the String Theory Incident. And my guest is Dr. John Maiden, full-time parent, husband, data science and machine learning leader, and part-time comedian. I'm Ben Ross, and I've spent more than a decade meeting interesting people from all walks of life. One of these people is my next guest and my friend, John Maiden. John, could you tell the audience about yourself?
Oh, thanks, Ben, for letting me be on your first episode. So, hi, I'm John Maiden. To give a quick run through of my background, long time ago in a galaxy far away, I started out in theoretical physics. I decided, starting with a PhD in string theory, that I wanted to do something a little bit different with my life. And I've tried many different roles. So I'm from the New York area, originally looked at possible career options after academia. It was either fashion or finance. I'm not much of a fashion guy, so finance seemed to be a place to be. So for many years, I worked in finance building models for different applications. A random accident of meeting Ben at a job interview got me started on the role of data science. And from there, I've worked with Ben on a startup together. I then worked a couple of years at JP Morgan Chase on the consumer side, trying to bring machine learning to give better insights into our customer behavior. And most recently, I was head of machine learning at Cherry, which is a company in the commercial real estate data space.
So obviously, technology is evolving all the time, and there are always new approaches. How do you learn new things? And is there something you could share, maybe something that you learned recently that you thought was fascinating?
Yeah, so I try to keep in touch with and keep track with what's going on. So part of it's just talking to peers at different companies. I mean, having been in the industry long enough, I know people at multiple companies that are all doing machine learning. So you find what the latest and greatest is, even if they're not going to get into the details. There are a couple of different newsletters I like to follow. So I'm not going to go to the archives every day because I don't need to follow research as closely. But a lot of it's going to be based on what's interesting, what's going on. Personally, I like to be very driven as on a specific project. So if I'm interested in working on something with NLP, I'm going to really get into and follow a lot of NLP papers. I think there's been a lot of interesting developments in NLP. I know reinforcement learning is also really taking off. So I get excited, and anytime I see a paper on those subjects, I try to read them and look through them.
Can you tell us how you got exposed to artificial intelligence, data science, and machine learning?
Oh, yeah. So I would say when I've been asked by graduates, looking to get into data science, I always say, how do you get started? And I always say, I don't really know. I kind of ended up by accident. I was interviewing for a hedge fund. I had some time to kill, and I was chatting with the external recruiter at the time, which happened to be Ben Ross. And we had nothing to do for about half an hour, 45 minutes. So we just started chatting, and I don't remember what we talked about, but you were thinking about data science and something that I was mildly familiar with, but not that much. I knew more about financial modeling. And you said, whether or not you get this job, I happen to be doing a startup on the side. Would you be interested in doing data science with us? Like, okay. The group of us got together and worked on, 2 years of nights and weekends to try to make Sherpa work. May it long live. But yeah, that's how I got introduced. I had to dig in and learn a lot more data science to start building out the functionality. I got to exposed to product and marketing and all the other things that needed to be done to get a startup off the ground. And that was how I kind of fell into data science in the first place.
What's something interesting that happened while you were part of a startup?
The biggest funny story I came out of Sherpa was the time that one of my models got a cease and desist letter. So
models gone wild.
Models gone wild. How no one else? I'd love to have someone else tell me a story equally crazy about a model getting a cease and desist letter. So yeah, so the goal of Project Sherpa was to improve the tech recruiting experience, to create a better long-term match between candidates and companies. And to be able to do that, we were scraping job descriptions from multiple websites. I mean, everyone, just because we're recording this, we didn't steal the traffic. We linked back to the original sites. But yes, we were taking job descriptions from Indeed, from Monster, and we were cleaning them up. We never made any money. We barely made money. So this is kind of a moot point after all these years. But yeah, so what the intent was to scrape the job descriptions and make them look better. Show like we can make monster.com generic descriptions look better by highlighting certain points, tokenizing, extracting out all the things you could search on. And even today, what we had is probably better than what all of these sites have. But one of the embedded features was we decided to do salary prediction. So I had a very simple model based on a little bit of data. We didn't have a ton of data to start with, but we had built a nice feedback loop so that over time we could put in more information and build a good predictive model based on job title, seniority, all the different descriptions. And the model itself, I mean, it was still early stages. It was about 10K too high on average.
So why don't you tell us a bit more about your work at JP Morgan Chase, as whatever you can share publicly. Obviously, I don't expect you to spill the magic beans, but would be great to get some context because I think it's a pretty different dimension of your career.
Right, right. I mean, I have to admit with data science, it usually isn't magic beans. We try to make it look mysterious. And the end of the
Okay.
day, but yeah, so what happened was we wanted to create better insights on Chase customers. So this is the consumer side of the business. And the way that JP Morgan Chase did is they decided to start a new business in the digital part of the company. So JP Morgan Chase, you got Chase part of the business, as most people think of Chase like the consumer bank. And then
Right.
within that, there was a separate division called digital. And the intent was to make an entire division that just focused on the website and mobile app, creating a better experience for that, and coordinating across all the separate product lines.
Got it.
Um, in banks, typically, every different product line thinks of itself as a separate focus on the customer. So, credit card doesn't think of you as a Chase customer. Credit card thinks of you as a credit card customer.
Right.
Consumer bank thinks of you as a consumer bank customer. Like they focus on what they offer, and they don't
Right.
necessarily think about everybody
And how they
else.
get paid, how they get bonused.
Well, it's about compensation, right? Like in the end of the day,
Right.
you're paid for signing up more credit card customers.
Right.
Totally
Okay.
makes sense. Totally relevant. And the intent was by putting digital off to the side, you had a digital experience that cut across all the different products and made it one consistent whole. So you didn't have everybody creating their own app, their own experience, and
Right.
something tied it together to show you this is the Chase experience. And so, at part of digital, there was a team that was created called Digital Intelligence. And that was when I started about 10 data scientists, we grew to 20 PhDs of all stripes. So, physics, math, economics, comp sci, statistics, operations. The intent was to create ways to target the customers better, to give better insights on their behavior. And that's what we did. So, we were given a cluster and we were so go crazy. And what we did is we built an entire machine learning pipeline from scratch. So
Wow.
yeah, we built up based on anonymous customer data. We tried to look at insights that we could talk about. So customers who liked Walmart, customers who liked travel to Germany, and then building up this type of insights to then say these are the customers you could target for this marketing campaign, or these are the
Right.
customers that you could look at and put into more sophisticated models. One
Got
of
it.
the things that we were looking to do that we were getting towards by the time I left was more personalized messaging. So rather
Mm.
than a generic,
Right.
if you spend more on your Chase, if you use your ultimate rewards
Right.
points to do this, you'll get this. The intent was to say you spent $800 on travel in the past 6 months. If you had switched over to a Chase Freedom card, you would have saved $300 in ultimate rewards points, that type of thing. So everything was going to be targeted to the customer level experience rather than a generic ad.
What did you do after JP Morgan Chase?
Yeah, so I was there for 4 years. Part of the team of 20 was a lead over 5 data scientists. From there, I moved on to a company called Cherry, where I was head machine learning. Cherry's in the commercial real estate data space. So commercial real estate's kind of interesting in that there's a lot of data needs. It's not as tech developed as something like residential real estate.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I'm sure people listening might not know the difference. Residential is going to be single family homes and apartment units. Commercial is, industrial, office, retail, multifamily.
Okay.
Lots of different interests because everyone's got a whole bunch of different ways of what they want to do with the data. They're going to buy a building. What are you going to do with
Right.
it? If you're
Right.
buying an industrial property because you want to open a data center, you care about electricity costs, you care about certain
Right.
aspects related to data centers. If you're opening up a industrial property because you want to make an Amazon warehouse, you care about location to the highway, right?
Right.
So that means that you need just the regular real estate data that you have, but then you need all these other data sets that are specific to what you would need. So
Right.
you might care about floodplains, you might care about points of interest. Like everything is there's lots of different things. And so what Cherry does is pull all that data into a series of feeds that can be ingested through a single API. On the
Wow.
machine learning side, what we were doing is trying to connect the data better. So addresses, everybody thinks an address is a unique identifier. It's not. It's actually an NLP challenge because addresses are messy. They can be written many different ways. When it comes to mapping addresses back to a property, it's a many to one mapping problem. So you need good machine learning to clean up the addresses in the first place. You need good engineering to map billions of possible addresses against each other. And then you also really need really good data because you're combining multiple sources to triangulate. There is no one database or set of data that gives you perfect address data. From there, we also worked on connecting and cleaning names. So we have certain property data sets that join naturally together. Addresses are not the best way. You need to say, if I see John Maiden in this set and John Maiden here, can I connect them together?
Mm-hmm.
The long-term goal was to build out a knowledge graph. So what my team and I did was we built out a largish knowledge graph that we could then use to mine for customer insights, specifically in the case for commercial real estate for owner masking. So if you have a commercial real estate property, it's very common that they're owned by an anonymous LLC. If you connect the right sets of data, so you have property data, you have
Mm-hmm.
mailing addresses, you have corporate registration, you have Wikipedia, you pull all
Right.
this data into one place, you can get immediate insights to say this is actually owned by this big developer, even if they had an anonymous LLC to purchase the property.
Right. I bet the IRS would love to get their hands on this.
Well, I mean, the data is usually not hard to find overall. It's usually it's a
Right.
scaling problem. So it's
Well,
you
I
can find.
mean, they would love to get access to your processed and normalized and data with all the enrichment that you've done.
Oh yeah, yeah. We put a lot of time and effort because to be able to get the knowledge graph to work, you have to clean the addresses, clean the names. Some of the customers we talked to were actually in the like money laundering space, which
Okay.
which was cool to talk about, but like
They were
one.
anti-money laundering, or they were laundering money on behalf
Oh
of.
no, anti-money laundering. But the intent was to say, okay, well, once the record goes back to an LLC registered in Panama, there's not much else we can do. We just don't have. That's more data than we have to work with. There was a lot of great insight that we had, and the intent was to continue to build more data sets into it, so you can get much better targeting, and then you can build more from that. So now that you have the knowledge graph, you can start to get into commercial property comps. You can look at evaluations. Like there's a lot you can grow off of that.
We love thinking about the world in these discrete chunks, these timelines. The business goes, how much is it going to cost? When can I have it? And how much money can I make? How do you build timelines or improve predictability around the delivery of research?
Yeah, so I, for a long time, was of the idea that R&D takes what R&D takes to develop, and
Okay.
it was not a very helpful view. I mean, you come
No.
out of academia, you come out of graduate school, it's like, oh yeah, well, you said a PhD, they'll think about it for a year, and maybe something cool will happen. Like, yeah, and then you flush, couple of $100,000 down the drain. It doesn't work
Right.
well. I mean, so that was coming out of graduate school and going into the industrial workplace. That was a big thing. Was like, how do you make this? How do you make your work usable? How do you make it? How do you justify the time and effort? I've tried to put it into more time boxed events. For a while I was somewhat suspicious of agile when it comes to R&D, and I've had many good discussions with many people who have convinced me over time that agile and data science, machine learning are actually very compatible.
Mm-hmm.
So part of it is, there's certain things that are going to be developed no matter what. Let's say you're building out a machine learning pipeline. Those are things that can be translated into discrete chunks, and you can tackle them through, piece by piece by piece. So if you know what you're going to build out on the infrastructure side, at least that's something that can be translated into a standard, regular 2 week sprint agile uh, ongoing work. The R&D does get harder, but I think
Mm-hmm.
what you can do is you can use agile to help you inform and determine how effective your R&D is going to be. Part of it's going to be on the time boxing side, right? You're not going to say go off and if you have, when you finally have something interesting, come back and tell me about it. Like that type
It's
of
not how business works, right?
that's I mean that's how PhD research works, which is totally not how people want to hear it. So the
Right.
intent was, within an agile framework, this sprint, I will look at XYZ, I will
Okay.
time box it, and I will come back and say, I did find something interesting or I did not find something interesting. Either
Okay.
I try something new, but it it tracks what you're doing. Like normally
Okay.
you investigate this, you investigate that, and then you're like, oh well, maybe I don't know. I think agile helps you inform yourself and keep yourself organized as a whole.
Right.
Um, but it also means that if you're working with product, you can't say, maybe this sprint I'll get it right, maybe next sprint I'll get it right.
Right.
But what you can do is you can inform it and say, what are you expecting to see? Is this a
Right.
whole new model from scratch that we've never tested before? Is this going to be a slight improvement over something we've developed before? Like, you can use this to inform what the deliverables are going to be, which is always your critical first step before you do any machine learning. Don't even think about the model. Don't think about the process. You think about what's the business trying to achieve. That's something you can translate into a statement that you put into a ticket for Agile. And then from
Got it.
there, you can say, I will be able to, by this point, tell you exactly if we're on the right track or not, and inform that back to product. But, it frames it as, rather than an ongoing investigation, it says that there are discrete stages that either you'll get there or you're not, but at least you're in the loop and you can communicate it.
Okay, so I think that's fantastic. I really like that framework. The original scientific method was hypothesis, test, KPIs against that test, and then you either decide to investigate further or the experiment was a failure, which actually made it a success.
Right.
And so I am sure that every CEO, when they hear that, is suddenly going to interrogate their chief data scientist. So John, you've just made a lot of very powerful enemies. Congratulations.
Right.
No, I'm kidding.
Well,
I think a
yeah,
lot of
please, I'd
product
love to hear
managers
that.
will also love it, right? And
All right. Well, I think that's, I've seen a lot in machine learning now, 8 years. I mean, the stuff that I've seen work is done very, very well, but it answers usually a very narrow, specific question. We want to do X. We will measure the
right,
success of X through this. And we will compare, A/B testing is always important. So comparing what we had versus what we didn't have, what we already had. But I think the important question is always, what business problem you're trying to solve. Like with people come in tech, now this could be a machine learning problem, it could be a pure engineering problem, software development problem, like whatever it is. Usually you want to jump into that technology. Like,
right,
I just read this amazing paper on reinforcement learning, so obviously reinforcement learning is going to be the way I'm going to solve everything I just learned about. But like most of the time when I see projects that fail or succeed, it's always, what was the business problem you're trying to solve.
right.
Um,
Okay,
the trickiest one I've always seen is usually it's customer attrition, because everyone wants to know why the customers are leaving. And I think the best piece of advice I ever got from someone on the marketing side was, by the time that you have enough of a signal, they're already out the door. And no model is able to predict better than that. But it's, in the end of the day, you have to be very clear. It's got to be something that's quantitative and measurable.
right.
Because otherwise it's just not going to go anywhere. You have to translate it into something that can be modeled. And if it can't be modeled, then that's fine. It's not a machine learning problem, and choose a better way to approach it.
So switching gears a little bit, I think that it's become really popular to talk about different styles of leadership. What are the things that you consider when you manage and mentor others?
Yeah, I always say communicator is probably the biggest role that I have when I try to work with people, mentor others. Um, if you're starting out in your career, you don't really know where to start and where to go.
Mm-hmm.
I like to preferably set out a vision. If you're early in your career, I'm happy to explain the steps, but generally it's, what are we trying to accomplish from a business perspective? Why do we need to do this? Why is it relevant to the business as a whole? Who cares about it, right? Is this a big problem? Is this a small problem? How long do we have? Who is it going to go to? Like some of the fundamental details. But at the end of the day, communication is important. That's where I see myself as the biggest facilitator, is making sure that whatever the work is, it fits into and explained to the larger business context, both to the
Right,
team that's trying to build it, but then also trying to explain whatever complicated, cool stuff we're building to the people on the business side, and saying, in a non-technical way, this is what you were looking for, this is what we could deliver, and this is how we're going to execute on it. And making sure that everybody knows and can work to make it in front of our live customers, because that's where, on the machine learning side, there's so many ways things can fail. The team can totally misunderstand the problem. The company can have the expectations that are totally out of whack with what can be done.
mm-hmm.
Um, Things like not even talking, a data science team works totally independently. You've got, there are many ways to structure data science. You can have a totally independent data science team that never talks engineering. One day they show up and say, I've come up with an amazing, brilliant Jupyter notebook. I need you to put this in production in front of 100 million live customers. And like, for some reason, they don't understand why engineering is going crazy.
Right,
Like, there's just so many people to talk to. And so that's why I say, like, communication is making sure that the information flows are open, and that the people
mm-hmm.
who are actually doing the work, that I'm blocking and tackling and making sure that they have a clear path to be able to execute well.
So communication is key.
Yeah.
So besides
I would say,
communication, what are other things that you consider?
well, I mean, I would also say that making sure that everyone increasing knowledge over time. That's another thing that I like.
Okay.
I really enjoy is that we learn things as a team. That we're not just focused on the project at hand. That we learn and try to expose ourselves to topics that we haven't seen before.
Right.
That was one of the things I was really happy with when I was at Chase as well as at Cherry. Is that we set up you might mock a journal club, but journal clubs get real people really excited to go into ongoing research, attending conferences. Oh yeah, but it's generally that if you're working for a company. I mean, my father was a lifer for IBM. He graduated from grad school and worked there for the rest of his life. Nobody's going to be at one company forever anymore. It just doesn't happen. So what I want to make sure is that the people who are part of the team that work for me feel like they're getting something out. Like they want to wake up every day excited to do the work, excited to come to the company, and they feel like they're building themselves, they're building their career and learning more. And so that's also part of it. Is not just here's the work, get it done. It's I'm here because I get to work on these projects. I get to learn more. I'm exposed to things I've never seen before. I get to work with people who are fun to work with, and that's part of creating a good working learning environment.
So sounds like you have a very human style of management.
There's a lot of different ways that data science can be applied. I mean, the big tech companies are out there; they're amazing. They're doing cool stuff. But you'd be surprised that I've seen machine learning applied to private equity. I saw one company that was using machine learning to do probabilistic record matching to connect police records with fire records with ambulance records, so that if you were in danger, you an epileptic who had a seizure, the police found you, they could quickly search your name in their database and find, and like connecting data that never got connected before on the public side. But like go to YouTube and look up some videos to find all the companies that are doing stuff and see like the wide variety of solutions out there in many different industries. I'm a big fan. When people ask me what I recommend Data Driven NYC, which is a meetup hosted by First Mark Capital. They have a monthly event that hosts, a lot of different startups in the machine learning data space. Go look at their old videos. They interview a lot of cool companies and a lot of cool founders. If you want something that's a mix of industry and machine learning applications, I always also recommend Data Council. So they hold big events across the country. A lot of their old videos have a mix of data engineering, data science, so you can learn what's going on in those companies. If your interest is a little more towards the academic, I also like MLConf, which is also industrial academic type of collaboration, and there's some good presentations there. So I definitely go to those, watch the videos, find out what looks interesting. Are you interested in automated vehicles? Are you interested in what are you interested in NLP? Like there's just so many ways it can go. And so I would say find something that gets you excited and use that to pull you in that direction.
So what are you looking to do next?
Yeah, so looking for opportunities to take everything that I've done on the consumer side of the operation and help companies target their customers better. So I understand customer behavior. I'm interested in working in big, tricky, messy problems. I know that's kind of a generic description, but that's kind of like what I like to do is problems, potentially unsupervised type of work where you have, you're trying to understand your customers better. You're trying to target them better. You're trying to figure out their behavior overall. I want to work with a large, big collaborative team where everyone is constantly getting excited, running around, sharing their work. I enjoy B2C type companies. I've also worked at B2B. Also excited about industries that haven't seen a ton of machine learning. It's always fun to bring new applications and solve new problems. So,
if you want to reach out to John, I'm going to put the LinkedIn bio or his LinkedIn link in the YouTube comments, or feel free to DM me and I will figure out a way to connect you. But John's a pretty easy guy to find. So Dr. John Maiden, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks very much, Ben. I enjoyed talking to you as well.